Today, I want to talk about the comparison and contrast essay for this for the fall 2023, and run through some important elements of a comparison and contrast essay, and then give the assignment at the very end. As always, I hope everybody's having a great day. And if you're not able to be in class today, I hope all of you will be in class the next class period. Step one is to remember you need a purpose, to remember that everything's an argument, even if it's only to argue that I'm worth reading. And because of that, you should view the comparisons and the contrasts as means to an end, not as ends unto themselves. In other words, the comparisons are supposed to serve a purpose. They don't exist just for you to make a statement. The contrasts are supposed to serve a purpose. They don't exist for you to explain this is different from what I expected. Second, the subjects. You will have a broad essay prompt, but you'll have subjects underneath that prompt. They should have actual similarities, they should have actual differences. So, for example, if we're going to try to compare a kangaroo and a volcano, I'm not sure exactly what those similarities are. Now, you're going to hear me contradict myself here in a slide or two, because I'm going to say that there's a certain statement that can be made about anything, and then I'm going to go to some outlandish lengths to point out similarities and differences. But the essay should not be outlandish. The essay should be something that makes an actual argument, that uses the comparison and the contrast for ends unto themselves. And I am not sure how comparing kangaroos and volcanoes works, and I'm not sure there's enough similarities to actually make it work. And I suppose I could make the same point. Don't compare or try to contrast things that are almost identical. Never write X and Y are similar but different. For example, a platypus and a unicorn are similar but different. A platypus and a unicorn are both mammals. A platypus and a unicorn are both rarely seen in North America. A platypus and a unicorn both have a hard, unusual object on their faces. The unicorn has a horn, the platypus has a duck bill. Platypuses and unicorns are different. Platypuses actually exist in Australia. Unicorns, to the best of our knowledge, do not exist in the real world. Because the platypus exists in Australia, it is composed of matter. Because the unicorn is not known to exist in our world, it is not composed of matter. As you can see, platypuses and unicorns are similar yet different. If I can make that phrase work with platypuses and unicorns, I can probably make it work with refrigerators and aardvarks. I can probably make it work with houses and volcanoes. I can probably make it work with any number of things. Don't write that sentence. I'm begging of you, don't write that sentence. The important part here is work to limit the focus. On the screen, there's photos of vampires and zombies. It's Halloween season, or soon will be Halloween season, so vampires and zombies seem like a perfect thing to write about. Pick 3 or 4 important points and stick to them. So, for example, I could talk about actors who have portrayed either zombies or vampires, or actors who have portrayed both zombies and vampires. I can talk about the appearance of vampires. I can talk about the appearance of zombies. I can talk about the diet that each one has. I can talk about the famous fictional examples of each. I can talk about the history of each in film or fiction or popular culture. In the length of the essay we have here, that might be the whole essay in and of itself. I can talk about how each species is created in movies or fiction. I can talk about the limitations that each species has. Perhaps each species has a real world inspiration, and I can talk about the threats that each pose to humanity. However, if you look at the highlights on the screen, I think that the blue is more artistic, Hollywood about them, works written about them, pop culture like. So the history in film, fiction, or pop culture, and again, I would probably pick the history of film. On the famous fictional examples, I would probably again stick to those that are shown on film or TV. And then I could talk about actors who've portrayed either or both. If I want to talk about the species themselves, I might talk about the limitations that each species has, but I'd probably start with the appearance. I'd go to the diet, and then I'd go to the limitation. Limit the focus. I'm not sure that in the length we have, I'd love to talk about the threat to humans. But if I talk about the threat to humans, maybe I can put that underneath diet, since humans seem to be the focus of the diet of both. But that's a pretty big topic, and maybe I have to cut diet or I have to cut limitations and put threat to humans there. Limit the focus. There may be some things you want to talk about that you have to throw out. There are two methods to do a a comparison and contrast essay. First is the block method. And as you look at the screen, the block method is relatively simple. Everything about zombies in one block, everything about vampires in another block. So I've got my introduction, I talk about the zombies, I talk about the vampires, I conclude. In a lot of ways, I think the point by point method is better. And I'm going to be asking you to use the point by point method. I have an introduction with the thesis. Then I'm going to talk about the appearance of zombies and the appearance of vampires. Then I'm going to talk about the limitations of zombies and vampires. And then I'm going to talk about the diet of zombies and vampires. So, very quickly, just kind of running through. The appearance of zombies is almost always gray. They almost always have absolutely positively no facial expressions. And their eyes never seem to focus. If I go to vampires, some vampires are gray, which allows me to have a transition. However, frequently, vampires look just like humans, except that they have canine teeth. And they may be a little bit more pale. Oftentimes, the vampire's eyes are striking, and the vampires seem to be able to attract humans with their eyes, with their looks. They're often very, very attractive, and as opposed to zombies who are always really ugly. Okay. On the limitations, zombies can't move very quickly. Zombies seem to have a hive mind and are unable to think for themselves. Zombies seem to have rotting flesh that falls off of them ever so often, so they are limited in all of those ways, even though 25, 30, 40 zombies can rip people to shreds and eat their brains or suck their blood or whatever it is that zombies do now. Vampires, on the other hand, generally are limited to the fact that they cannot come out in the daytime. There are usually limitations. They can not enter a household unless they're invited. And then I'll go to the diet. Both like humans. Zombies, however, seem to prefer brains. Vampires seem to prefer blood. There's my essay. A little bit disjointed. It's a first draft. We'll keep going from there. Contrast and compare. Don't combine. Remember that a contrast is how items differ. A comparison is how items are similar. Combination is trying to merge them into one. I'm not writing about zombie vampires. To the best of my knowledge, that's a species that doesn't exist. I'm not writing about vampire zombies. Once again, that's a species, to the best of my knowledge, that doesn't exist. I am contrasting how they differ. I am comparing how they are the same. Your prompt. Compare and contrast your expectations for university life with the reality of university life. The essay should be Mount Marty specific. When you first decided to go to college or university, did you expect it to be a road to heaven? Or did you expect it to be a road to hell? If you expected a road to heaven, did you get there? Or did you wind up on a side street in hell? If you expected a road to hell, is that what you got? Because of all the schoolwork and all of the hard lectures and the boring classes that are in the general ed department? Or did you find a heaven because you found a lot of friends, you were able to continue your athletic career, whatever it is? Expectations, fulfillment. And again, please remember to think about how you can go point by point. What are 2 or 3 points where you're going to have the expectations and fulfillments come together in sort of a Venn diagram? And how can you structure the essay to fit that? Remember to keep the focus on the subject of the paper, not the writer. So you're going to keep the focus on expectations and fulfillment. Yes, it's going to be like the narrative. You're going to use some I's, but there shouldn't be, in a 2-page paper, every sentence should not begin with I. We've spent some time talking about limiting things being short, not shallow. One of the tips is eliminate prepositional phrases, especially those that begin with the of the. Sit down and read the essay aloud from the last sentence to the first sentence to see if every sentence makes sense. Personal decisions are often complicated. Please make sure that you are taking that complicated and making it comprehensible for your audience. Your audience may have had a far different experience than you have. Some people had a lot of choices about where to attend college or university. Other people may have been told by their parents, this is where you're going. Some people have, a difficult decision because they're hundreds or thousands of miles away from home. Some people travel 5 minutes to get here. But the decision could be equally complicated about how they wound up at Mount Marty. So make sure that all of those personal decisions, all of those complicated decisions are comprehensible to your reader. If you have any questions, please ask the next time you're in class. I hope this is a somewhat enjoyable and not too navel gazing of an assignment. And again, I hope everybody has a great day.